If you plan for the year, plant rice. If you plan for the decade, plant fruit trees. But if you plan for the lifetime, educate people. Hello, I'm Dane Smith. This is my video blog on words and their power and the necessity for us to understand what it is we're saying. And it's very hard for me to listen to or to quote a proverb or something that's really profound, like that little piece of ancient Chinese wisdom, without stopping to actually think about it. Words and ideas, these are the things that we build society upon. More so than any other form of art, more than drawing, more than music, more than dance and gesticulation. When we want to communicate with somebody, we do it through words. Be they spoken or be they written, it is words and their meaning that we are sharing. To say the word cow brings up an image. To say the word cat brings up a different image. Now, for a cat, you might think of a favorite pet, something that's personal. For a cow, you might actually think of something that's completely not something that you would see on a child's flashcard. You might think of a hamburger and be like, that burger last night was some good tasting cow. That's fine. That's what words do. They are ideas, they are imagery that is condensed. Every word has a meaning. Every meaning gives the word power. They say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, but there are words that mean so much more than a painting can give. Words like education. If you plan for the lifetime, educate people. Education is the act or process of learning. A lot of people here in the United States think that education means going to school, being taught, and passing your tests and getting a piece of paper at the end saying, we believe that you know everything we think that you need to know. Teaching actually just means, or a teaching or teaching as an action, either one, is about, the definition for teaching is principles or knowledge imparted by an authority. Teaching somebody literally means that they view you as being an expert, they value what you have to say, and so what you say, they learn. Teaching is one form of a learning process, but it's not all of it. If you compare this to food and say that teaching is a can of beans, there's nothing wrong with having a can of beans in your diet. Being spoon-fed a can of beans as well. There's nothing wrong with the beans. But if that's all you get, people would not refer to that as a well-rounded diet. And if that's all you have in your education, then it's not a very well-rounded education. The biggest danger with teaching is indoctrination. Now, doctrine is just Greek, and it means teaching. That's all it means. There's nothing wrong with it. Doctrination is the act or state of being a teaching. Indoctrination is when somebody puts their teachings into you. Again, there's not actually anything wrong with that. The danger of indoctrination is that it does not leave room for questions. It does not leave room to formulate your own ideas or opinions. If you have a good teacher, then you probably will get some good teaching. If you have a horrible teacher, you'll probably get bad teaching. If you're in a bad system, then no matter how good the teacher, what they are required to teach you will be bad. Indoctrination is dangerous, but it's not evil. However, I love philosophy, and which is almost redundant. Philosophy is also Greek, and it means that philia is the first part of that. Just means to love. This is a familial love. This is the kind of love that you give to your brother or your mother, or something like that. It's an I love you because I know who you are. I've been around you for a while kind of love. And then Sophie just means to think. I love to think is what philosophy is all about. If you like to take time to consider an idea, that's philosophy. Well, actually, if you take time to consider an idea, that's just thinking. If you love to take time to consider an idea, that's philosophy. Philosophers are people who are habitually philosophizing. The most unique thing about words, in my personal opinion, is that they're constructive. You're meant to be able to take them apart, put them back together however you need in order to convey whatever message you're trying to say. Philosophy is one such word. And philosophically speaking, I believe that education should be much the same. I think that the learning process needs to be something that we take an active part in. There's an old Jewish philosophy of education that says that all learning begins with a question. This is actually very parallel to the scientific method. You come up with a theory or an idea, and then you have a hypothesis. The hypothesis is your question that you're going to answer, and the whole purpose of your study, of your survey, or anything else that you do is to answer that question. Learning and questions go hand in hand. Somebody asks a question, somebody finds an answer. So let me pose this question to you. What's the difference between an ignorant person and an agnorant person? To understand the difference, you're going to have to go back to the origins of the word. Words have meanings. They are ideas. They have message, and with that message comes power. An ignorant person is somebody who doesn't know something. That's all it means. They don't know. An ignorant person is somebody who does not know. You would assume that both of them are the same unless you actually go back to the roots. The roots are also in Greek. You will find as you go through any kind of an educational system today that most words that are intellectual or used by intellectuals take their roots in Greek. There will be people out there who will say, no, what about all those Latin words? Well, you see, when Rome took over Greece, they took all of the philosophers and the teachers from Greece, they moved them to Rome, and they built a university, put them all in there, and then they sent their kids there and said, there, now you're our educators. Teach our children. A good portion of the Latin words that we use in intellectia are, in fact, take their origins in Greek as well. So ignorant takes its roots in Greek. The root of the word, the main portion of the word, is from gnosis. Gnosis just means knowledge, to know something. Funny how that works. It even sounds like it, to know. Gnoso. The prefixes change the substance of the word, though. Ignorant, the ig, ig, is a prefix denoting that you don't know something. An ignorant person doesn't know that they're lacking knowledge. Ignorance, on the other hand, the ag, denotes that you do know that you don't know. You're aware of your lack of knowledge. Ignorance is most commonly used in the form of agnosticism, which can be either a theology or a philosophy, depending on how you want to apply it, that says that I don't know the answers. I don't have enough information. Philosophically speaking, I like to embrace my agnostic side. I don't have the answers. Not all of them. I have a lot of them that I have worked through, but I'm still learning things. I'm still finding that there were things that even that I thought I knew that I didn't fully understand. And so my learning process never ends. And to that, I'm going to go ahead and invite anybody watching, if you disagree with me at any point in a movie, bring it up. Go ahead, comment down in the bottom. If it's something that I want to hit on later that relates to another video blog that I'll be doing, I'll bring it up then. If it's something that needs me to actually come back and revisit, a subject that I already covered, I'll come back and I'll recover it. Ignorance, asking questions, actually taking the time to think about what information you know is the whole premise on my philosophy of education. Perhaps the best example of this is the movie Dead Poets Society. In the very early stages of the movie, Robin Williams, playing a very brilliant teacher, is telling his students about words and their powers, how words and ideas move people. And he talks about the importance of poetry. We live for poetry. We live for the expression that only is capable through words. And he jumps at his desk at one point. What are you doing up there? Getting a new perspective. And then he invites the whole class, actually kind of orders them to all get up there and take their turn, get a new perspective. Throughout the rest of the movie, you'll see him moving around, never teaching from behind a desk, or hardly ever teaching from behind a desk. He's always somewhere else in the room, in and amongst his students, down on the ground, crouched low, where he looks up at them, looks up to them, and their process of learning, the respect that's given there. He'll walk across their desks, and he has in many places makes them do the same thing. Why? Because a new perspective is critical. In order to understand, in order to think from a different perspective, you have to first give yourself a different perspective. This is what words are about. If we don't realize that there's more to know, we are ignorant. Ignorant people are hard to educate. If we can first somehow transform them into agnorant people, then they will go and they will learn on their own. That is a promise. But if you're going to ask questions and you're going to find answers, then the wording of the question is just as critical as the wording as the answer. Words have meanings. And if you don't know the root, the origin story behind the word, you're probably going to miss all of the subtle nuances that go along with that. For example, it is impossible, it is impossible to take a crap into a hole in the ground. Why? That's because the term to crap was a polite expression at one point in time. I'm going to go take a crap now. A man by the name of Crapper invented the toilet, the porcelain toilet, to be specific. By the origin, the only way that you can take a crap is if you do it into a porcelain bowl that flushes. Unless you have one of those out with you in the woods, not a crap. Not technically. That's the origins. Other origins, understanding, education is the greatest enemy of prejudice. Know the origin of your words is critical if you don't want to be offended over something that's stupid. Which most people get offended over stupid things because they were improperly educated. Somebody didn't give them the right information and they didn't know that they could go find it on their own. A good friend of mine was writing up the flyers for their store for Black Friday. She is Hispanic, and she lives in a community with a lot of Hispanics. The flyers were written, one in English, one in Spanish. A lady came in and got very offended when she read on the Spanish flyer the word negro. She complained to the store manager. Store manager went to my friend and asked her if she could change the word. My friend says, no, negro is Spanish for black. The word means black. You can't have Black Friday without using the word black in it. But because of a lack of education and not understanding that the word negro literally means black in another language, that's where it comes from, we get offended by it. You have to know the origins of a word more than just the connotations. I don't walk around speaking half Spanish, picking and choosing colors, because people don't know that origin. That's choosing your words based on the connotations. But understanding the words based on their origins keeps you from looking like an idiot when you get offended at a Spanish paper that none of the Spanish have any problem, or none of the Spanish speakers have any problems with. It's their word. Now I'm going to move on to another word that I'm going to give us a new perspective on. And this one's confrontational. This one is religion. Everybody has an idea pre-prescribed in their head, a prejudice on what that word means. But do you know its origin? What is the origin of the word religion? If you're going to avoid being offended by a word, you need to know where it comes from. Education is the greatest enemy of prejudice. The origins to the word religion are Greek. The prefix re means to do something again. Rerun, rewind, repeat, recycle. It means to do something again. The main root comes from one of two possible sources. The first one is the Greek word logos. Logos means to think. Logic. To re-logic. That's what religion could be. The other one is legia, which means to connect, specifically to connect to the source or to fate. If you're reconnecting to fate, it becomes important to understand what fate is, and a lot of people have different definitions for this. The one that I like the most is the greater flow of human history is fate. It's the flow of where we came from, where we are, and where we're going. That's fate. If something is fated to happen, that means it's downstream from us. You know. If you're going to use religion, then you have to realize that it means that you're either rethinking, you're reconnecting to the great flow of humanity, or it means that it could be a mix of both. To rethink your connection to the great flow. Almost everybody throws religion into a theological camp. And it doesn't actually belong there, because philosophy is a form of religion. I religiously philosophize. Just because I think I know something doesn't mean that I don't go back, revisit it, and reconsider what I know. That's religious study. It's the reason why somebody says, oh, I run religiously. That doesn't mean that they met God while they were out there jogging. It means that they do it again and again. And they don't just run again. They process, how am I doing my run? Am I getting the maximum calorie burn out of this? Am I getting the maximum muscle growth? They study it and they rethink every aspect of it. That is what religion is about. That is where we're going to go with religion. And that's the only way I'm ever going to use that word in any of my following videos. To carefully reconsider what we know. That is religion to me. Religion, if you're not rethinking, it's just doctrine. It's just teaching. And if you don't study something religiously, you're only studying to the point of indoctrination. Ask the questions. Challenge the status quo. Don't be satisfied simply to take somebody else's word for it. Don't be satisfied simply to take my word for it. Ask your questions. Challenge me. My roommate and one of my best friends, he and I will sit down, and in the 1 year that we've been living together now, we have had massive amounts, countless hours of theological and philosophical discussion. We don't agree on most anything. But every discussion we have is a learning experience for both of us, because both of us are philosophically agnostic. We admit that we don't know everything, so we're always interested to hear what somebody else comes up with. Between that and our religious approach to philosophy, to constantly go back over what we think and reconsider how accurate it actually is, this allows us to have some very deep, meaningful conversations that are not simply about football scores. You can be religious about your football game. A lot of professional athletes are. Do not be so quick to judge a word based on the connotations for which it is commonly used. Be careful when you're using a word that has strong connotations, be they positive or be they negative or be they inflammatory. Be careful using your words. Choose them, but know them so you know which ones to choose. And so that when somebody challenges you on a word choice that you make, you can back it up. Moving right along, next controversial word that I'm going to bring up. I've mentioned theology. Let's tackle that one while we're talking about the meaning of philosophy. Theology, the study of God. Theo, Greek, means God. The ology ending gives it a study. That's what it means. It means the study of God. So who is God? Well, technically speaking, that's an incorrect question. What is God? God is a title, not a name. We mistakenly consider when somebody says God that they're talking about one specific God, because popular in this culture is the Christian, you'd be Protestant or Catholic, who serves one God named God. That's not actually his name, it's a title. The Christians took their God from the Jews. The Jewish God has a name, he gave us a name. And Jews choose not to use it. We consider that we screwed up way too badly, and we are no longer worthy to say his name, which when you think about it, it's kind of rude. Hey, call me Dane. And then be like, oh no, I could never use your name. I told you to call me by that name. No. Instead, I'm going to call you by boy. Why? Because that's what you are, you're a boy. Yeah. A decent portion of Jews, when they were referring to their God, they use the term Hashem. Hashem literally means the name. It's almost like Voldemort. He who shall not be named. Also kind of rude. But the point is that God is still a title. What are the origins of the word God? Why is it a title? Well, if you go back to every ancient culture that's out there, God is not somebody who created something. God is somebody who controls fate. Ooh, look, right back to fate. And thus theology becomes the study of our connection to fate. Joy. If making a universe makes you a god, and Terry Pratchett, David Eddings, and J.K. Rowling are all gods, Kali, Thor, Poseidon, not gods. They didn't create worlds. They didn't create universes. If being a god was about being super powerful, greater than your average person, then you could say that Donald Trump's a god. He has a lot of influence. He sways a lot of power. Matter of fact, he can be a complete idiot and still make it into the final rounds of a presidential election as a complete and utter ass. Sounds pretty superhuman to me. But does he actually control fate? That's the real delineation. So, with theology then, and knowing that God is about choosing fate, let's take a look at different theological approaches to the world, because it's about the connection to fate. You really have two extremes on this. Actually, technically, you have four extremes depending on how you're looking at it. On one side, you have pantheism, everything is God. And on the other side, you have atheism, nothing is God. Nothing sways fate. There is no fate. Going the other direction on this same grid, you have, on one side, fatalism. Fate is fixed. There's nothing you can do to change it. The pajamas you're wearing today, 100 years ago, it was still the same pajamas that you were going to wear. 100 years from now, still the same pajamas that you're going to wear today. Nothing you could have done would have changed that. Doesn't matter how many pajamas you have in your drawer, those were the ones that you were going to wear today. Already decided. The other option is what's known as free will. Everything that becomes fate, we chose it. I think that I'm going to go back to an expression that I've used so long and so often I've forgotten its origins. That phrase is, truth is found somewhere in the middle. Truth is found somewhere in the middle. I like that. It helps us avoid extreme ideologies, extreme reactions. Truth is somewhere in the middle. You get two sides of a story. Brother and sister are arguing. They're having a fight. Mom and dad come in. All right, how did this start? One kid tells one story, one kid tells the other story. Well, truth is somewhere in the middle. Somewhere between the two stories is what actually happened. And so, I think that somewhere between fatalism and free will is the truth. The expression I like to use for my approach to fate is called choice and consequence. We get to make our choice. Everything else gets to decide the consequences. If you go over to your friend's house and are constantly stealing his teacups every time you come over to visit, he's probably going to stop inviting you. That's his choice, your consequence. Or he's going to put out the crappy teacups that he can't get rid of because they're just, hop right out of the garbage can and back into the cupboard. But you steal those. Get them off his hands, out of his house. Either way, we make a choice. Someone or something else decides the consequence for that. That's my personal approach on the idea of fate, what fate is. And so I will often mix and compare philosophies and theologies. I was told for a while, for a very long while, and many people still tell me that you can't mix the two. That they are inherently opposing forces, philosophy and theology. I disagree. I think that philosophy deals with you and yourself, how you choose to live your life in respect to yourself. I believe that theology at that point then, since it's the study of God, and God is somebody who controls fate, making theology a study about our interactions with fate, the flow of the human history. Theology then is about how we choose to live among the world and everyone else. Philosophy is internalized. Theology is vastly external, like micro and macro studies of human behavior. How we think, how we portray ourselves to the world. Those are my thoughts on that one. But don't take my word for it. Education is about a learning process. Find your own answers. Find your own beliefs. Find your own philosophies. Find your own theologies. But understand that if you want to challenge my opinions and my ideas, I would much rather hear your thoughts and your ideas more than the doctrine that has been imparted to you. So if you approach me and say, well, my teacher said this, I'm probably not going to listen as intently as if your teacher came up and told me that. Because it's not your opinion. And in fact, if you went and actually asked your teacher on that and dug deep enough, you'll probably find out that somebody else taught him that. We are teaching our teachers a cycle of indoctrination. Questions are critical to breaking that. Understanding your words are critical to your questions. And so it all stems back down to what is the purpose of language? What is the purpose of words? Why do they matter? They matter because they are our greatest and most commonly used and most often overlooked form of conversation, communication, idea sharing, art. Literature is art. History is about a flow of ideas that in facts and activities and pictures. Take a moment to hop up on the professor's desk. Get a new look at the world around you. Question everything. Questions are the beginning of learning. Learning is the point of the education process. If you plan for the year, plant rice. If you plan for the decade, plant fruit trees. But if you plan for your lifetime, or for the lifetimes that follow, educate people. I'm Dane Smith, and thank you for your time.